Alright, so this is my how to beat ritual beasts. When it comes to the fusions, it's kind of hard to target them with card effects because of the fact that they can tag out. Basically, they can evade, they can duck, they can avoid. They can avoid your bombless, your trenchals. Trenchal is obviously really good. It'll deal with the weak monsters, the little monsters used to make the fusions, but it could dodge stuff. The fusions can dodge small stuff like, compulse, deprison, could dodge mirror force, stuff like that. So since they can dodge targeting effects, they can dodge being selected for something just by activating their effects and tagging out, makes it hard to just compulse them or just book a moon them or something. But it's hard to just like for example, book a moon. It'd be hard for you to book a moon and guarantee the monster will be the fusion will be face down. Obviously, it'll tag out to avoid the book a moon. But doesn't mean you shouldn't play book a moon. You should play it anyway because you want them to tag out, so that way it'd be easier to deal with the monsters they bring out. The spiritual beasts or the tamers, because they'll be easier to deal with since they can't. The tamers themselves and the spiritual beasts, they themselves don't dodge or tag out, so you can play stuff on them like creature swap, book of eclipse, stuff like that. Alright, so to deal with the fusions, which are the main things that's going to be hard to deal with, because the main decks, monsters, they're easier to deal with. They're pretty weak, so you can roughly just run them over with attacks, or just use any of your staples, mirror force, deprison, whatever you got to use to kill monsters, work just fine on the main deck monsters. But the extra deck monsters are the ones that are pretty tough, because they can avoid most of your traps. They can avoid most of your cards. So you definitely want to use cards that make it hard for them to avoid, where even if they do dodge, it's almost pointless. For example, Regeki. You play Regeki, except for Pedalfin, because Pedalfin can't be destroyed. Double check, and cannot be destroyed by card effects. Yeah, can't be destroyed by card effects, so they don't need to dodge. Pedalfin can survive a Regeki, a Dark Hole, Trenchal, Needle Scaling, whatever you got, right? It can survive that. This one right here, Ulti Gaia Paleo, obviously can negate the Regeki, so he won't have to worry about that. Plus, he can't tag out anyway. But mainly, Ulti Conahawk and Ulti Apelio. These are the two that, if they're on the field, this card will work. Regeki will work. Because if they do tag out, they'll just bring out the materials, and then the materials will still be destroyed since they're on the field at the resolution of Regeki and Dark Hole. Same goes if you use Trenchal or Neocean. So that right there takes care of those cards, because you want to force the tag out. Or if they don't tag out, even better for you. But typically you want to force the tag out, so that way it'd be easier to deal with because it's easier to deal with the main deck monsters than it is the extra deck monsters. So the sooner you get rid of the extra deck monsters, the better chance you have. They do have steeds. So certain cards will be hard to use because they could just use steeds against JD, against Chaos Hunter, Crimson Blader, Scrap, Landois, against any of your monsters. This is their way to deal with those types of monsters. Plus they can use this card to prevent you from going into any of these extra deck monsters. So monsters wouldn't be the typical way you would deal with the Ritual Beast, but you could under the right conditions. Chaos Hunter is generically good. You can splash it in any deck, including a Fiend deck. You can splash it in any deck, so it more likely will be used in a deck or two. But some people have been side decking this thing, but you can main deck it. When your opponent special summons a monster, you can discard one card to special summon this card from your hand. The opponent can't remove cards from play. It's generic. It's not too specific. Farfa. Under the right conditions, if you equip this to a monster like Mecha Equip Engineer or something like that, you can use Farfa's effect, to help you disrupt your opponent's plays. So it's just about understanding the Ritual Beast archetype and knowing what it can and can't do, and keeping track of what has already been special summoned, that you can see the limits and then exploit the limits. So once you get to the point where your opponent can't tag out, that'd be the best time to activate an effect. Of course, you can use some basic floodgates. Some people main deck, like Vanny's Emptiness. Some decks main deck Imperial Iron Wall, so you can use those. I personally use Red Screen just because it slows down the deck. Since they don't have an immediate out to this, they just have technically one out to this, but they have to set it up to get rid of it. It's a good defense, helps you stall long enough to make a move, and mainly you want to avoid the OTK, so this is useful in that. Skill Drain mainly deals with the effects of the monsters on the field, but won't really do much against the fusions. Because the fusions go back into the extra deck as a cost, and Skill Drain does not negate anything unless it's on the field. Then you got Lose a Turn. Now this would work because regardless if the fusion leaves the field, it will negate it no matter where it goes. So that already is something you can use. Trap 6, Trap Hole Nightmare pretty much does the same thing. But you can only activate when your opponent's special summons one of the fusions and uses the fusion's effect, since returning the fusion back to the extra deck is a cost. This will activate to negate the effect, and the fusion will still be in the extra deck, but it won't bring nothing back. I've seen this happen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro when I tested out Ritual Beast myself, and it sucked. So it's like, yeah, this does work against them. Space Time Trap Hole. Obviously this is not to be used against the fusions because it'd be pointless, because the fusions can just tag themselves out. You want to use this against the materials. Wait, I said that wrong. This card doesn't do that. This card only works from the hand or from the extra deck. So actually, this card doesn't work. So never mind that one. The Black Horn Heaven definitely does work because the fusion summoning is an inherent summon. So this works. Warning works. Pretty much the same thing. Compose is just to force the tag out, so that way you can deal with what they have on the field a whole lot easier than the fusions. I already mentioned those cards. Enemy controllers, good defensively, good offensively, especially if you're in a scenario where you use enemy controllers to switch the battle position of a monster. These, are weaker in defense or in attack. Corner Hawk, Ulti Corner Hawk, as you can see, is weaker in attack, and Ulti Pedofin is weaker in attack. So switching to attack mode, will make your opponent want to tag out because they're weaker in attack mode. In defense mode, Ulti Apelio is weaker in defense, and so is Ulti Gaia Apelio is weaker in defense. But 2100 defense is still good though. Book of Moon. This is mainly even enemy control, you can use the secondary effect to steal one of your opponent's tamers or spiritual beasts, so that way they can't fuse. You can use Book of Moon to put one of these monsters face down so they can't fuse, or use Book of Moon on any of the ritual beasts you want, like Book of Mooning Pedofin face down because he can be destroyed while face down. So they'll want to tag out to avoid that weakness. And most of these defense are pretty low, so you can run over Ulti Hawk, Corner Hawk, and Ulti Apelio relatively easy with a decent monster with at least 1700 plus attack. Wouldn't be that hard, because you can use, I don't even have them in here, should have been in here. Mace Stroke, there you go. Use Mace Stroke's effect. Oh, but of course I got Sky Blaster, pretty much does the same thing. You could use either his first or his secondary effect, but typically you might want to use the secondary effect. But if you don't have him and you do have Stroke, you can use Stroke's first effect, a detachment material, to put a monster face down. Since some of these monsters are weaker face down than they are face up, and weaker in defense than attack, they'll probably tag out to increase their defense. And most of the monsters, like the Elder, Win, Ram Pengu, are weak in defense. So is Kanahawk, but Pedofin and Lara, they're pretty strong in defense, so you won't be able to run those two over. But the other ones, you could pretty much run them over if they're in defense. And you can bunk heads with Apelio, unless they use the effect. You might want to avoid that. Just like Black Horn of Heaven, you can use Steel Sworn Roach because he's pretty much the same thing as Black Horn of Heaven. Anytime somebody special summons a level 5 or higher monster, you can detach a material to negate that special summon destroyed. So it works like Horn of Heaven. So you can use this on the fusions. It's a rank 4, it's generic. Evil Sworn Nightmare. Requires 2 level 4 darks. Depending on what kind of deck you're running, you could play this. When an opponent special summons a monster or monsters, except during the damage step, you can detach 1 exploding material from this card, change the special summon monster or monsters to face down defense position. So this is pretty useful because you can use this effect on the materials. You can also use this on pendulum monsters, like when your opponent pendulum summons, you can use this, since this can also do multiple monsters. This is a really good effect, and it's decent against you know, if your opponent special summons the materials, you could put them face down, so that way they can't fuse, because they have to be face up to fuse. This effect also is good against exceed summons, as long as the monsters were special. Evil Sworn Ophion. It's kind of like Vanity's Emptiness. Level 5 and higher monsters cannot be special summoned as long as this thing has a material. So if you run an Evil Sworn deck, obviously you go into Ophion, and then right there it can prevent the summoning of the fusion monsters. Leviar, that's a dragon. This is not an immediate out, but it's a good way to slow down the deck if you want. You can make Leviar and steal one of their level 4 or lower Ritual Beast monsters that's out of play, special summon to your side field, so that way they have one less monster out of play. You can also do the same thing, similar effect with Burial from a Different Dimension, since this card lets you select up to 3 removed from play monsters and return them to their owner's graveyard, not just your monsters. So you can use this on your opponent. If you're running this in your Infernoids or any deck where you run Burial from a Different Dimension, you can use this card to empty out the out of play zone, the removed from play zone, so that way they don't have targets for their fusions. Obviously you want to wait until they activate their fusion's effect, because returning the fusion is a cost, and then when they're trying to bring back the materials, you can obviously chain to the effect and send the materials to the graveyard instead, so that way they have no target, they have nothing special. Book Eclipse, pretty much the same thing as Book Moon. The thing about Book Eclipse, even if they tag out, the monsters they bring out will be put force face down anyway, so it's not that different from like a Dark Hole or Geki play. And this is good offensive and defensively. So it's just a good card in general. It's good against Pendulum Summoning. Good against maybe a Soul Charge play. So Book of Eclipse is pretty good. Sky Blaster is a decent card, mainly because it'll force your opponent to trigger the effects of the fusions to avoid them not having monsters still tag out, so that way they can have some monsters. Other than Laura or Pedalfin, if they summon any of the other ones, it's easy to run them over with the 2000 attack power of Castell, since he can't attack the turn he uses his effect. One-on-one can pretty much do the same thing in a way. The only thing is the monsters have to be in attack mode, so if your opponent has a Pedalfin, ulti Pedalfin in defense mode, one-on-one will be really useless against them, because he has 2000 defense and he's not in attack mode, so you can't use your effect on him. That's it on Knight. You can only activate his effect once per chain, but you only need to activate his effect once. Even if your opponent tags out, it'll be pointless, because the monsters that come out will be destroyed when Exciton resolves his effect. He has 1900 attack, so that's pretty decent. Could run over most of the main deck monsters. Yevazar Doka, since a lot of these since the returning of the fusion monster to the extra deck is an effect, you know, you can negate it with cards like Divine Wrath or like Evil Zardoka or Notorious Beast Landos. Being able to negate the effects are very useful. Plus they negate and destroy the monsters, so that comes in handy. And Doka can do its effect twice, so that's very useful. And it's still 2300. Nice little dragon beater. Consider Pleiades. It'll act like, you know, Compulse. You know, spell speed 2 effects, or it's chainable. You can disrupt some plays. You can force the tag out of one of the fusions. Like you can use Pleiades on ulti pedal fin, and your opponent will tag out in order to have some type of defense, and you just run over the defense with your 2500 Pleiades. Or you can also summon Gaia Charger on top of Pleiades since he's a level 5 and pierce through your opponent's defense in case you want to go in first, you're trying to go for game or trying to deal some damage. You can combo Pleiades with a Gaia Charger play. Mermail Abyss Giles. Since this monster specifically deals with level 5 and higher monsters, you can use this like a skill drain type of effect. While this card is face up and has XYZ materials, while this face up card has XYZ material, level 5 higher monsters cannot attack, so you don't have to worry about your opponent attacking you with the fusions because they will be level 5 and higher. And then once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach a material from this card, negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls that have less attack than this card until the end of the turn. This monster has 2800 attack. Pedal Fin has 200. Ulti Apollo has 2600, and Ulti Conohawk has 1400. So they meet the requirements to get negated. And then you have Ulti Gaia Pelio, which is 3200. He's the only exception, but since he's level 10, he won't be able to attack Abyss Guile, because the first effect of Abyss Guile is continuous. So that's useful in itself. And then we have Crimson Blader. If you can manage to make your opponent tag out, and then you attack one of his weaker monsters with Crimson Blader, now you could prevent him from being able to fusion summon the following turn, and you could just slowly deal some damage or just stall long enough to draw into your outs Landois. By discarding a spell card, you can negate a monster effect. If you have multiple spell cards, you can chain that effect multiple times. So that's very useful for negating the effects of the fusions, for negating the effects of some of the main deck monsters. Scrap Dragon. The main thing is you'll sacrifice a card you have very little use for, target one of your opponent's fusions that could be destroyed by Scrap Dragon's effect, and they'll tag out, and then you can just go and attack. Or if you go for an attack and they tag out and bring out some monsters, you kill one by battle, and then main phase 2 activate effect to kill the other one, so that way they don't have any tamers and spiritual beasts to fuse on their following turn. And that's just some main deck solutions in order to beat the ritual beast. And that's the end of the video.